perceived, if there was a perceived conflict. It's not admitted.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and welcome to the first meeting of January 2026. I hope you guys all had a great Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'd like to remind the public that in committee meetings of the whole, there are no decisions that are being made here tonight. It is merely for information and for Council to gather as much information and then to provide feedback back to administration if needed. So with that, I would like to call the meeting to order at 6:01 now. The first order of business is to actually approve the agenda, so I'm going to look towards council for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Singh?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
All in favor? And next is the minutes. Did everybody get a chance to read the previous minutes? Perfect, and I'll look for a motion to accept those minutes.
I motion to accept the minutes.
Perfect, thank you. All in favor? Excellent. So now we're moving on into the actual official agenda, which is business. First up is 5A. It is the Cochrane Policing Study. And I'd like to call Mr. Jay Juden up to the podium. He is the Director of Community Safety to begin his presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and councillors. Tonight I'll summarize the police services model review and the direction it sets for Cochrane. I'll briefly walk through the study background, the process, what residents told us, and the recommended direction. I'll end with the bottom line and open it up for questions. Supported by a $30,000 provincial grant, Western Management Consultants, or WMC, conducted an independent assessment of policing in Cochrane and the current model we are utilizing. The review was not a critique of crime rates or operational performance, but a strategic examination of value for money, governance, and long-term sustainability under conditions of rapid growth, with consideration for the potential change in the policing landscape here in Alberta. And with that context, I'd like to show you the process that they used. WMC followed a clear and staged process. It started with a document review, then stakeholder interviews, and a public survey to capture resident perspectives. They examined the current policing model and identified potential future alternative models through a process of data collection and analysis that included our current policing model and financial and operational analysis. 5 policing models were evaluated, included with the financial modeling for each. And one of those 5 models was selected for an in-depth analysis. This approach ensured evidence-based recommendations that reflect community input and fiscal realities. What residents told us. The public survey had 159 respondents, which is a helpful context for interpreting the results. Firstly, there was no demand for a new police service. Residents report feeling safe and having a strong overall confidence in the RCMP. However, reoccurring concerns were identified, and they included residents wanting more visible enforcement in neighborhoods and around traffic safety. There's a limited understanding of what the RCMP versus what a community peace officer does and their role, and what each law enforcement agency is responsible for. And there's a perceived lack of local influence over policing priorities. Of course, our course of action directly responds to these themes. First, we will maintain the RCMP as our police of jurisdiction. This aligns with resident support and performance. Second, we've taken steps to strengthen governance through the development and adoption of a policing committee. The committee will be the bridge between the community and the RCMP. The committee has already met twice and will meet quarterly. One of the priorities of the committee is to ensure that Cochrane is receiving value for money invested in policing. The committee is working on collaboratively establishing improved reporting requirements to assist with this priority, for which the RCMP will report on 4 times per year. Third, we will expand our community peace officer program. Council supported 2 community peace officer growth positions and 2 summer bylaw students in the 2026 budget that will greatly improve visibility and service to our citizens. And fourth, we have plans to deliver public education to clarify role responsibility between the RCMP and the community peace officer program. Plans include website updates with roles explained, in-person pop-ups at community events, social media messaging, and our new records management system to improve annual reporting clarity. And fifth, administration will explore future regional policing opportunities as the Municipal Police Service Agreement approaches expiry in 2032. This includes ongoing communications with neighboring municipalities and monitoring both provincial and federal directions related to policing. What's the bottom line? Cochrane's safe. Crime is trending down year over year in almost every category, and Cochrane has one of the lowest crime severity indexes in Canada. We are fortunate. Our primary challenge is growth and visibility, not rising crime. We asked stakeholders that included residents what mattered. We listened, and in 2026, we will incorporate changes based on what we heard. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you for your presentation. I just forgot to say at the beginning that Councillor McFadden is not going to be here this evening. She is dealing with some family issues right now, so just so the public knows. And we're going to open it up to questions. Council, any questions about the report? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for the presentation, Jay. I believe I am the representative for the Cochrane Policing Commission. I haven't made a meeting yet, I don't know for sure. I was just wondering, as it's a new committee, will it be like most of our other committees, perhaps all our other committees, where it'll be up to me to report back to council on the ongoings of the policing committee, or will we still get annual updates from the RCMP, or how will that look in the future?
Through Deputy to Councillor Wilson, a combination, really. I think there would be, as you've said, the committee is really in its infancy stages, and we're still establishing what that reporting tempo and cadence and information will look like. I think you as a board representative will have the ability to share your insight and information provided to you at those meetings with council. There'll also be an opportunity for both the committee chair as well as the officer in charge, Inspector Bruner, to attend council on an annual basis or more if so desired, to provide some statistical information for council, as well as provide an opportunity for council to ask direct questions to the committee and or the officer in charge.
Okay, thank you. And is it supposed to be an oversight committee, if I understand it right? If a resident or a group of residents, say a community association, had some concern about whatever policing issue, it would behoove them to contact the policing committee or contact myself as the council representative? Or how do residents flow through to the policing committee?
And to Councillor Wilson, through the deputy, the idea would be for the public to directly engage the committee through a website address, a email address, for people to express any concerns that they may have relative to policing. I would also add that all of the 4 scheduled committee meetings on an annual basis are open to the public to attend as an open forum. There's also, the committee is working on opportunities for them to be available at different times throughout the year at different locations in the community to make themselves available for the community to approach community members.
I was just about to ask, will the meetings be here in chambers and online for people to watch, or I wasn't sure where we're having them as well? Or will they be recorded, I suppose, is what I'm really asking.
Through Councillor Wilson, or to Councillor Wilson through Deputy Mayor. The idea would be for people to attend in person. The meetings of most committees have been here. It's the chair and the officer in charge have suggested that because it's a policing committee meeting, that those meetings be moved to the police detachment as an opportunity to showcase the establishment or the detachment, as well as provide some access to a community available public meeting room at that facility.
Okay, great. And then finally, I believe I heard this was required of all municipalities, so every municipality in Alberta is going through this, a new policing committee and figuring out how it works. Is that correct? This isn't Cochrane unique, this?
Yes, and that is correct through Alberta legislation that was introduced. We adopted the community policing bylaw here last in 2025. I can inform council that Cochrane is probably around middle of the pack. So there are some committees that have been established for a number of years. We're just got up and running late in 2025, Q4 of 2025, and there are other municipalities that are just at the infancy stages, a little bit behind us in getting their committees established.
Okay. Thank you for all the information. I'm glad to be the first representative on this brand new committee, and I'll update council as soon as we learn more about what we're up to over there.
Councillor MacDonald?
In addition to Councillor Wilson and the RCMP representatives, who else is on the committee?
So we have myself as the Director of Community Safety, as well as Jaylene Robertson, the Director of Legislative Services, that attend the meetings, or one of our delegates if we're not able to attend in person. We have 6 residents, all of Cochrane. 5 of them are adults, and 1 of them is a youth under the age of 18.
Nice. So that kind of functions as a liaison between the public and the RCMP and us, I suppose. Is that replacing a different communication intermediary, or is this just a completely novel concept and it's replacing a gap of communication previously?
And through Deputy Mayor to Councillor MacDonald, I believe the intent by the Alberta government was to address a gap. I think there were a number of municipalities within Alberta that felt that they didn't have a say in how their community was policed, and there was a lack of oversight around policing in their community. And I believe this was brought in through legislation to help address that gap.
Okay. I'm excited to hear more. And then in response to the report and your presentation, I think adding the peace officers and the fact that Cochrane has such a low crime rating and low crime severity, it makes sense that we can focus more on community policing and have a more robust network of the peace officers, and the increased visibility, the increased communication strategy. I'm excited about all of it. Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
I think the province is talked about creating a provincial police service in the future. How did that possibility affect the review, and what signs should council watch for that might mean we need to rethink our policing model?
Certainly. And through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Singh. So that, there was 5 models that were examined within the study itself. I want to provide you the most accurate information. So the first model that was examined was actually creating our own independent municipal police service, a standalone police service for the town of Cochrane. The second model that was introduced was a provincial police service that would have been administered through a variation of sheriff-led service. The third model that was examined was a regional police service, so that would be in partnership with one or more neighboring municipalities. The fourth model that was examined was our current model, the RCMP current contract model. And then the fifth model was the expansion of our community peace officer program, a dramatic expansion of that program. So those 5 models were looked at. So in the report itself, it goes into some detail around some of the benefits, as well as some of the challenges and risks that each of those models presented through their analysis. And the report goes into some detail around each of those models.
Okay.
Councillor Singh, if I can just add just a few comments there too. I think it's important to recognize that the recommended approach using RCMP and advancing the CPOs is really a practical, measured, and flexible approach. It's based on our current needs, but also looking at what the future and being flexible. Your comment about the province and provincial policing, we're aware of it. I think Mr. Juden and the team creating the policing committee is an important step, but we'll be aware of what's happening in the province as well. And having that flexibility while addressing current problems, I think, is really an important step for us.
Thank you. And you mentioned about the rules about the CPOs and the RCMP officers. Is a better way that people should be aware, like, apart from the website or something, like a seminars or something that exploring or?
And to Councillor Singh through the Deputy Mayor, that's correct. So there's a number of strategies. We're working actively with our communication section and looking at any and all potential opportunities to help educate the public about the difference between those roles, because most of the public don't, they just see a person in uniform. They don't know if they're a police officer or a community peace officer. And most people don't understand that community peace officers are provincially appointed and can only enforce provincial statutes and local bylaw, whereas the RCMP can not only enforce provincial and local bylaws, but they have the ability to investigate criminal matters, whereas a community peace officer can't. So there's some other differences, but that's the primary difference, and we will work through our communication section to help provide as many platforms as possible and opportunities to engage with the public so that they do understand that difference.
Sure, thank you. And one more question. Do you know on an average how many residents does one RCMP officer in Cochrane serve?
Through Deputy Mayor Councillor Singh, I don't have that off the top of my head. I'd have to get a calculator out and figure that out for you.
No problem. Yeah, thank you.
But I can bring that back to you if you so wish.
Councillor Gill?
My question was actually about the confusion with residents between bylaw and RCMP. But I guess with that, is the policing committee going to be, is part of that role with the public, educating the public and thinking of ideas or, I guess, educational resources, or is that more going to be driven by admin just trying to educate the public? I'm just wondering where that's going to come into things more specifically.
And to Councillor Gale through Deputy Mayor, I think it's going to be a role that everyone from the committee member to Councillor Wilson to our RCMP to our bylaw officers, to members of the committee, to myself, and our communications section take in ensuring that we reach as many people and help inform our residents about what each of those roles are and what value they provide to the community. So I think it's a kind of an all hands on deck approach.
And in the full study, did they really go into depth with that, or did they basically just say, your residents are confused, figure it out? Did they suggest ideas for us to go back to residents, or is it really more of a surface level type thing?
And to Councillor Gale through the Deputy Mayor, they provide some suggestions. They don't go into great detail, but there is a definite recommendation that education be provided to the public so that there is clarity around that role confusion.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
You're welcome.
Well, it looks like it might just be me. I do have a couple questions. I found the report very interesting. I read through the entire thing, and I have a couple of questions. When you said that you're going to bring, some strategies will be implemented through 2026, is it possible for council to get like a 6-month check-in about what has actually been implemented? Because again, sometimes we don't actually know what has been implemented, and then we'll get a yearly report and not ever know what has been done. So I think that would be beneficial for council as things are implemented. That would be great. When it came to the community police officers and kind of, upping their levels of authority, do we have a cost to that, or because obviously I don't know if there's like a different training mechanism or if there'd be more training that they would have to do. But I was curious if we were considering upping that level of authority, is there going to be a cost that would come with it?
Deputy Mayor, I would say, I think anytime you change something, there has to be an examination around costs for sure. Appointments occur through the province. So if, for instance, some community peace officers in other jurisdictions have the ability to enforce the Petty Trespass Act and arrest someone that's trespassing on property, that authorization, that lawful authorization is provided through the province. And it's through an application from the municipality, and we have to demonstrate that there's one, a need, and then two, that we have training in place to ensure that our members can effectively deal with those types of situations. The province oversees training and ensures that there's a training standard for all our community peace officers. Is there a cost associated to that? There would be, there is a potential for an increase in costs. There is. I'm not sure what that would be, but for us to arrest someone and have to hand them over to the RCMP, I'm not sure around transporting arrestees under legislation currently for community peace officers. I think they have to be turned over to the RCMP right away. There would be some costs. I'm not sure exactly what those would be right now.
Okay. And the other thing that I was quite interested in reading is that, we talk about kind of the suggestion is to keep an eye on that regional police service, but yet once you reach 50,000 people, most just choose to create their own police force. It seemed kind of interesting that we would consider going a regional route when most places, by the time they have 50,000 people, and probably by the time we consider a regional police service, we might be 50,000 people, which then we would be probably talking more about creating our own individual service. It was just an interesting observation. And the only other thing that I wanted to bring up, years ago, the town used to employ, I think, a couple of administrative people at the RCMP building. I don't know if, and I have no idea, but did those people, when they were employed, did they help with the communication piece? Because it seems that there was a lot of the stuff in the communication piece. I think there seemed to be a lapse from the RCMP side that I was reading to the general public. So I was just curious if the town having any employee that the town is employing as an administrative person would help with that communication gap, or is it just left up to the communications overall for the town?
So from my knowledge, those administrative positions that were utilized by the RCMP, but under the town's administration umbrella, have been transitioned over to the RCMP.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. And then we're billed back for those positions. I do know that they are in an administrative capacity only, so accepting accident reports, file numbers, those types of things, not engaged in any type of communication, outward or internal communication. Yeah.
Okay. And I know that we had a great meeting at AUMA with the RCMP, and, you know, they had promised us that we should be up to capacity for officers. I guess what is, and this might be more of a question for administration, but at what point do we obviously check back in to see where we are with those levels, or the standard of reporting that we had kind of requested? You know, is that something that we'll be doing in the first quarter to see where things are at? Because the whole point is to not only bring up the amount of officers, but that communication piece as well. So I was just curious what was happening with that.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, Mr. Juden. So, Deputy Mayor Fedeko, I followed up with the RCMP following our discussion. So I have the contacts with the people that we met, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's an important aspect of what council had a discussion with them, and the expectations around the needs in our community and what we want to see. I intend to follow up with them in early January. It'll be 60 days since we met with them, just to see if we're still on track with the commitments that they believe they said in the second quarter that they would be delivering upon. I think that's going to be something that's a really important part of this, not only to reflect on the contents of the study itself, but also our conversations and the relationship that we're building with the RCMP, then complement that with the work that with the policing committee. I think we're really well positioned if all these things are falling in place for the future in Cochrane. We've been very fortunate to have a very safe community, but we are growing very rapidly. We're right next to a large urban center. Things can change quickly, so being ahead of, being proactive rather than reactive is where I'd like us to be.
Perfect. Thank you for that update. I don't have any further questions. It was a really great report to be able to read through, though, so thank you for that. Council, any other final thoughts? No?
Before you proceed, I just had a couple additional comments. You had asked about the six-month check-in. Mr. Juden and I met today, just preparing for today, and one of the things we had discussed is what are the next steps and how we can continue to keep council updated. So that's something certainly we're committed to. And then Councillor Singh, your question, and again, math is not my forte, but certainly you asked about the number of officers to residents. So we're looking at approximately 1,700 to 2,000 residents per RCMP officer. Again, we're not at full complement, so that's why I've given you that range. If they're full complement, it's just under 1,700. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. Thanks, Mr. Juden.
Okay, thank you.
And now I'd like to move on to item 5B, Strategic Housing Initiatives Update with Mr. Knox, Director of Social Development.
All right. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. Before we begin today, I want to briefly situate today's presentation in the housing-related decisions that Council has been considering over the past year. Through the 2025 budget deliberations, Council made a deliberate investment to strengthen the town's capacity in this area by approving the housing strategist role. This was recognizing that housing is a strategic driver of community well-being, economic resilience, and long-term growth for Cochrane. That investment became operational in March of 2025 when the role was filled by Gina Vandenberg, our housing strategist. Since then, administration has been focused on converting that budget decision into real capacity, building the evidence base through our recently launched housing needs assessment, strengthening our partnerships locally and regionally, and positioning the town to be ready when funding and project opportunities emerge. Today's update is an opportunity to bring that work together. to provide you with a consolidated view of our mandate, our areas of focus, and progress to date, and to support clear communication of this work to our broader community. The value of this investment is not only in our near-term actions, but ensuring that future council decisions on land, policy, partnerships, and investments are informed, coordinated, and guided by a clear strategy, rather than a reactive to the pressures as they arise. With that context, I'm going to turn it over to our housing strategist to walk you through the mandate, early insights, and talk a little bit about what's next. So Gina, if you'd like to join us, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. And it's a pleasure to present to Committee of the Whole this evening on the exciting opportunities unfolding between strategic housing initiatives and community stakeholders around Cochrane. So I want to start off with this with a general introduction on strategic initiatives mandate. Its mandate is built on three main pillars to guide its work. The first is collaborate. We work with local agencies and other orders of government to increase access to housing, ensuring all residents have a safe and stable place to live. Second, we enable. We create the conditions that cultivate the development of affordable housing and other shelter supports. And third, we protect by orchestrating programs that safeguard housing stability for residents, helping them remain in their homes. So strategic housing initiatives focuses on aiding residents across the entire housing continuum, but largely concentrating on the moderate to lower income side with the support of community, town departments, and other levels of government. When we talk about the housing continuum, we mean the full range of housing options, from emergency shelter and transitional housing to affordable rental housing and ultimately stable home ownership. Our work is designed to ensure that people can move along this continuum as their needs change, helping them access the right housing at the right time. By focusing across the continuum, we aim to address both immediate housing needs and long-term stability, creating a more resilient and inclusive community for all residents. Strategic housing works closely with community organizations across the key areas of housing support. With emergency shelter, we collaborate with local organizations to provide emergency shelter, supports that respond to the immediate needs of the community, ensuring residents have a safe place to stay in urgent situations. Affordable housing and rental and home ownership, our work is centered on creating the right conditions for affordable housing development, whether for rental or home ownership. These homes are typically priced 10, 20, or 30% below average market rates, making them accessible to more residents. It is through our valuable community partners, such as CSHO and Rocky View Foundation, who operate these programs. Strategic housing initiatives would also explore the need for innovative solutions and possibilities in transitional social housing that may be required to meet the unique needs of Cochrane. In this case, the town partners with community organizations to increase the availability of deeply subsidized housing in Cochrane. This helps residents move from temporary housing, such as women's or youth shelters, toward more stable long-term solutions. Together, these partnerships help ensure that housing options are available at every stage of the housing continuum. Strategic Housing Initiatives has spent the last 9 months understanding the housing landscape in Cochrane and building the foundation for advancing affordable housing. We've accomplished this by mapping what type of housing Cochrane has, what housing and shelter supports we need, who's working on what, who's best to work in these areas, and building those relationships with the community to make it all happen. A key objective of Housing Initiatives mandate is policy development. Our goal here is to review existing town policies to identify any gaps that might be limiting the development of affordable housing or effective housing stability in Cochrane. Once these gaps are identified, we work on developing practical policy solutions that make it easier to create affordable housing and support residents in maintaining stable homes. Currently, we are reviewing a range of policies, including the land use bylaw to ensure zoning supports diverse housing types, the municipal development plan to align growth planning with housing needs, transit policies to ensure safe, compassionate, and inclusive ridership for all, business licensing regulations to understand the impact of short-term vacation rentals on long-term rental stability, financial policies such as tax incentives, relief programs, or grants to encourage affordable housing development, developing housing and homelessness strategies to evaluate what's working and where adjustments are needed, and community partnership frameworks to strengthen collaboration with local organizations and stakeholders. By reviewing these policies thoughtfully, we can remove barriers, create supportive conditions, and help Cochrane grow in a way that meets the housing needs of all residents. A big part of Strategic Housing's work is helping people stay in their homes and avoid homelessness, what we call housing stability. With the support of the town's community organizations, we aim to create programs and campaigns that raise awareness about shelter needs, affordable housing, and ways to safeguard housing stability. Our work is intended to target three main areas: early intervention, by helping people who are showing early signs of housing stress before it turns into crisis; eviction prevention, by supporting individuals and families at risk of losing their homes so they can stay where they live; and housing stabilization, by helping people who've experienced homelessness stay housed once they leave a shelter or a street situation. Together, these approaches ensure we're supporting residents before, during, and after a housing crisis, helping them achieve long-term stability. Education and awareness are another important part of Strategic Housing's work. We do this through workshops, presentations, information sessions, and public awareness campaigns. The goal is to generate informed decision-making and collaboration across the community. These efforts will also help reduce stigma and misconceptions about housing challenges while fostering a more engaged, resilient community. By building awareness, we strengthen policy and advocacy, empower residents, and create the capacity for people to take action. Ultimately, this contributes to a holistic community well-being, making Cochrane a stronger, more inclusive place for everyone. Advocacy is a key part of the Strategic Initiative's work, both regionally and locally. On the regional level, we participate in the Regional Housing Network. This allows us to collaborate with neighboring communities on shared housing challenges, housing initiatives, and advocate for solutions that benefit the broader region. At the local level, we focus on Cochrane-specific issues. This can include advocating for funding for capital housing projects, suggesting amendments to the Municipal Government Act, or providing input on federal and provincial housing policies. By working at both levels, we ensure Cochrane's needs are heard at the federal and provincial government levels while also contributing to broader regional housing strategies. But Strategic Housing Initiative doesn't work in isolation. Its success depends on collaboration across the town, with departments contributing their expertise and resources. In short, the town acts as a team, making sure that SHAI's mandate is backed by the full range of municipal supports. Without the support of cross-departmental collaboration, policy and program reforms, as well as capital projects, would not be possible. Housing touches almost every department across the organization and is interwoven in many aspects of the town's work. First, community growth, particularly planning and development, helps with development applications, permits, and land use planning. This includes things like bylaw exemptions, the municipal development plan, and neighborhood or area structure plans. Infrastructure, such as utilities and engineering, ensures service capacity for multi-unit housing complexes and manages related considerations such as traffic studies. Economic development looks at the broader community impact, including how unsheltered residents affect local businesses and how short-term vacation rentals influence the availability of long-term housing. Family and community social services, along with the Family Resource Network, provide wraparound services that help residents remain stable in their homes. Parks and Recreation and bylaw enforcement help manage encampments, debris in public spaces, and other bylaw-related issues to maintain safe, livable neighborhoods. Building and safety codes ensure housing meets accessibility standards and that building permits and inspections are handled properly. Finally, finance supports housing initiatives through tools like tax incentives for affordable housing projects and property tax caps or rebates. Together, this cross-departmental collaboration ensures that housing solutions are coordinated, practical, and sustainable, drawing on the full capacity of the town to support residents. So what's next for strategic housing initiatives? The following section will explore what's next for the strategic housing initiatives, the priorities, the plans, and the opportunities that will guide the next phase of work. So let's take a look at the current housing initiatives underway in Cochrane. We're starting with the Community Housing Needs Assessment, which gathers the evidence we need, sets benchmarks, and helps us measure performance. The forthcoming Housing Action and Implementation Plan would build on that, identifying priorities and outlining how we'll turn them into action. Through community awareness efforts, we're sharing resources and information online to keep residents informed about housing options and needs. And then on the policy side, we're exploring land use bylaw reforms to attract developers interested in building affordable housing. For program development, we're conceptualizing initiatives that promote housing stability, helping residents stay in their homes. And finally, in capital projects, we're looking at opportunities for a new affordable housing development in downtown Cochrane, increasing the supply of accessible units in the heart of the community. So as one of the first initiatives, one of the Community Housing Needs Assessment, as council is aware, the town is currently undertaking this initiative. Not only will this research-based study identify Cochrane's housing conditions, gaps, and trends in the community, but it will ultimately guide the development of housing strategies, plans, and policies. It will ensure housing discussions are grounded in data and lived experience rather than assumptions. This information will tell Cochrane's housing story to strengthen applications for provincial, federal, or grant funding, support partnerships with developers, nonprofits, and service providers. It will improve housing affordability and stability over time, help ensure the community has the right mix of housing types for people at different life stages and income levels, all while giving residents a voice in shaping the future of housing in their community. So at this time, I'm pleased to share some of the key findings of the Housing Needs Assessment Preliminary Analysis, which was included in the agenda package. The preliminary analysis from the Community Housing Needs Assessment reveals some important trends in Cochrane's housing landscape. First, population growth has been significant. Cochrane's overall population has increased by over 110% since 2011. The senior population is growing even faster, with an increase of roughly 192%, and the 85 and older group nearly tripled during that period. When we look at housing stock, most homes are 3-bedroom units, about 81%, yet most households are smaller, consisting of 1 or 2 people, making up 57% of households. In the rental market, nearly 90% of rental properties are secondary suites, which suggests there are limited alternatives like purpose-built apartments. Housing affordability is also a concern. Almost 20% of residents spend more than 30% of their income on housing, which is considered a key measure of housing stress. Subsidized rental units are limited, accounting for only 5.1% of total rentals, while local providers report long wait lists. Tenant households are disproportionately affected by housing need, and this group has grown by 56% since 2016. Looking ahead, demand for housing is expected to grow substantially, with Cochrane projected to need nearly 7,000 new units by 2031 and over 16,000 units by 2041 to keep pace with population growth. This works out to be approximately 695 units per year, of which 266 units, or 38.83% of these housing units, are anticipated to serve moderate income, low income, and very low income households. These findings highlight the urgency of planning and action to ensure Cochrane can meet the housing needs of current and future residents. In terms of next steps for the Community Housing Needs Assessment, the process has 4 phases. Phase 1 took place from September to December, involved data collection and preliminary analysis. This is how we identified the trends and insights we just reviewed. Phase 2 is focused on community engagement, taking place in January. This is where we are now. We're connecting with residents, stakeholders, and community organizations to hear directly from the people of Cochrane about their housing experiences and priorities. Phase 3, which is running from February to March, will involve drafting the housing needs assessment and compiling a What We Heard report, summarizing community input. And then finally, with Phase 4, in April, we'll deliver the final housing needs assessment, combining the data analysis and community input to guide housing priorities and action plans moving forward. So as noted in the previous slide, community engagement for the housing needs assessment is underway this January. Commencing tomorrow, the project page on Let's Talk Cochrane, along with surveys for youth and the general population, will be launched. We're also connecting directly with residents through focus groups, pop-ups, school sessions, and interviews with seniors, youth, Indigenous residents, and social service providers. Throughout the month, additional virtual sessions and appearances at community events will ensure diverse voices are heard. And the town's communications team is graciously supporting us to make engagement broad and effective. So in closing, Strategic Housing Initiatives is working to ensure that all Cochrane residents have access to safe, stable, and affordable housing. Through collaborations across town departments, community partners, policy development programs, and ongoing advocacy, we are addressing housing needs across the full continuum, from emergency shelter to long-term care to long-term home ownership. The Community Housing Needs Assessment will be providing the evidence we need, while community engagement ensures that residents' voices guide our work. Moving forward, the town will continue to implement initiatives, policies, and programs that respond to these findings and priorities, building a stronger, more resilient, and inclusive community for everyone, while keeping council informed along the way. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for your time and input and continued engagement as we work together to shape the future of housing in Cochrane. Matt and I welcome your questions at this time.
Thank you for the presentation. Council, opening it up to your questions. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. When I look at this, I think of long-term and short-term. Councillor Fedeko and I sit on the CSHO board, and I've experienced firsthand for, 18 months now, how hard it is to move the needle in this space. So long-term, so many great ideas. Eventually, I want to have a conversation about things like inclusionary zoning and how we're pushing our developers to be a part of this conversation in a permanent, long-term sense. But can you please identify for me, please, short-term wins, quick wins? What exists in this space that we can move the needle faster? Does it exist? Or is this, to me, a lot of this sits in kind of philosophical discussion. Is there action in the short term?
So first off, we have been, as part of the 9 months, we've been scouting out the land that's available within the town to see what opportunities there are, because land is often the highest cost in terms of constructing. That's the first initiative, is looking at what those opportunities are. Second, it's adjusting some of those policies, looking at those land use bylaws to make it more attractive for affordable housing providers to build. So it's finding the land, it's giving them the means to actually build. And one of the key pieces of that is having that plan, and that's the housing strategy and implementation plan, ensuring that we have all of our community partners to help with facilitating these, because we can't do it without them. It's building those relationships and keeping that communication open with them, and how we can all support each other.
Right. Through the deputy to Councillor McDonald, one of the things that I've seen kind of early in our research, I've seen what other municipalities have done. There are some simple ones and ones that I think actually this council has previously identified. So an example, if we were trying to increase the rental market and you're saying, hey, let's remove the barriers of our residents. So if there's a cost or a fee to create a secondary suite, that could be a really great quick policy. Here you go. The issue is if that's not the right lever to be pulling. So for example, in our space right now, we know we have an abundance of secondary suites. We're looking more of preliminary analysis might be more of these apartments. So we might be looking at different policies or different levers that we would then do that. The part that I think is most important, and Gina highlighted this quite well, is because it's always at this system levels approach, we do have to dig in a little bit deeper after we have that data. So when we say short term, I definitely think there'll be some movement within this year. I don't think we're going to have that answer in a couple weeks, sort of thing. But from that perspective, you know, what I think is exciting is, you know, we're going to be meeting with the developers liaison group as well and having that different space. The part that's been really exciting too is across administration as we talk about these different scenarios or what could be done. Regardless of what area we're working with, people are very interested in moving this forward. So while we don't have maybe a definite answer outside of what Gina shared right now, definitely I think the larger piece for us is because there are so many different things we can do, once we have our community needs assessment and we've dug into the data of what, you know, similar communities where they were, where we are today, like Airdrie, for example, there's a lot of data of what they did that worked really well and what they didn't work really well. So as we have this data and we hear from our community, we'll have a better sense of where we can hit that traction a little faster. And I think the part is that's important for all of us to recognize is there probably will need to be some sort of investment or a policy change trade-off, and that's where we would come to council for support or recognition on which lever do you want to pull.
Right. That makes sense. And so much of what you just said makes me think of this thing I came up with or found as I was researching, preparing for tonight. We need to be planning for people, not population. And the stats said it in your presentation tonight with the 200% growth of a certain aging demographic, 300% of another. Our households are 1-2 people.
Yep.
They don't need households or houses with 4 bedrooms. So planning for 50,000 people living in Cochrane isn't the same as planning for who is moving to Cochrane, which families are aging in Cochrane. Just work through a quick list I wrote down here. If a family right now in Cochrane is facing housing instability, who do they go talk to?
First off, they would attend, they would come to FCSS, the offices there where they can be provided some supports and some considerations and some resources to help offset with some of those living costs that they would have. So basically diverting some of their shelter costs by providing supports through other living expenses. If they're in a crisis situation, unfortunately at this time, they would be referred to Calgary. That's the only alternative. There are some supports to provide that mobility, that transportation there, but there really isn't much of a social network or support network other than those programs that are provided by FCSS to support them.
Right. And are we communicating that those supports are available? Is that fairly well known, would you say? Or
yes, we work very closely with the FCSS resource network workers, the support workers there, as well as the information. We had just updated the housing website, the town's website, to provide these the resources and the referrals and where people can go for information so that they're being directed to the right sources and understanding who's responsible for what. So that's part of the public education and awareness piece is refreshing that website to provide that information, but it's that regular communication with FCSS staff that also helps support letting them know what other resources are available as funding and housing funding and supports become available.
Good, perfect. You mentioned bylaw deals with encampments. I, as a resident, have heard anecdotally about encampments over my years in Cochrane, but I was curious if you're seeing an increase in that activity.
There isn't any recorded encampments within the town. There's evidence that there are people that are living in the brush, but they're mobile and they relocate. So sure. there isn't any concrete encampments at this time. We do know that those who who are having difficulty with finding permanent shelter. They do reside outside of the Cochrane area, where they're finding other places to reside in mobile homes, in vans in their vehicles, on other properties just on the outskirts of Cochrane.
The invisible
Yes.
homeless, I think it's referred to sometimes. Okay, and then finally, when you say public engagement is focusing in part on youth, what do you mean by youth? Like post-secondary or younger?
So youth, it can be very broad, between the ages of 14 to 35. We look at youth because they don't have much. Many of them are under the age of voting, so they don't have a significant voice. And we do know that there are quite a number of them that are experiencing a housing instability, couch surfing, and just not living in the most positive living environment. And so we're looking at the range of individuals who are in that situation, don't have anywhere to go, as well as those who are transitioning out of the house and are trying to find affordable housing to potentially start a family, or to just leave their guardian's residence. There's a unique perspective from them, because they're the ones that Cochrane would want to have stay within the town. They help with building economic development, with jobs. And so they have a very unique perspective in terms of what their housing situation versus somebody who's already been in the housing environment, who's already been searching for it.
So can you clarify for our youth engagement, the age range?
The age range is between 14 and 35.
Okay.
We are leveraging the YAP group, at the Youth Active group through the FCSS, and there will be an information or a focus group session that will be provided. As well, they're going to be doing, there's also a youth survey that's going to be gauging their specific needs, their targeted perspectives, to help gauge with that age group.
Sure. I was particularly interested in the youth engagement because at one of the candidates forums at Found, it was a hot topic just in kind of the milling around. There's a lot of young folks there who want to stay in Cochrane, but we will lose them if they can't find anywhere to live. I heard a bunch of people say, I don't want to live in my grandma's basement anymore. So yeah, I'm really interested in what they have to say. Okay, so much good stuff there. Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Thank you. How does these findings compare to the 2020 housing need assessment? And what are the most significant changes or trends council should be aware of?
So in terms of the 2020 assessment, that was a challenging time to undertake a community housing needs assessment because it was done during COVID. So the level of community engagement was not as robust. It was limited focus groups. There was limited capacity to advertise, and there wasn't necessarily the resources to undertake such a comprehensive community housing needs assessment. So what we're doing with this round is that we are leveraging all of the resources that we have in terms of the staff support that we have within the town of Cochrane and the knowledge and expertise that they have, as well as looking at the doing the more robust engagement piece, connecting with the community, undertaking the survey. So it's just gathering more data that will be more up to date than what we currently have.
So through the deputy to Councillor Singh, I think the previous assessment, if you were to look at it in a very simple way, and I want to highlight that, the previous assessment probably would have stopped in this kind of preliminary analysis, and rather than that next step of this, as Gina was highlighting, that more thorough engagement and understanding, The part that I think is most important is a lot has changed since that assessment in terms of the explosive growth in our population, the economic challenges that our communities are facing and seeing, where we're seeing even those folks who used to be in those low income brackets might be challenged by housing. We're seeing people who are actually in those medium brackets challenged by the housing of Cochrane. And I think the key piece for us is not to just understand the data. And I think that's really what we've gotten out of our previous assessments is just the data. And the data we know, it's easy to dig into, it's easy to understand, but to really understand that, what do we do with this? And how do we make this work for the people who are truly here versus them just being a number? And I think that's where this is going to go to that next level. We're not there yet. We still have to do the engagement. We still have to go a bit further and work with that lived experience of both our community partners and the individuals in those spaces. And the analysis, if you dig into the previous one, is much more just that data.
The question is, with our growing senior population, what type of housing should Cochrane prioritize to support aging in place? And how soon should planning begin?
We're currently working with Rocky View Foundation because they are largely responsible, or have been in the past, largely responsible for providing seniors housing. So we have the Evergreen Manor, which is independent seniors living in affordable housing. We're looking at, we'd be exploring to expand that independent living that's subsidized, considering there are seniors units, but they're at market. But we want to focus on working with Rocky View Foundation to identify areas where we can build more seniors housing. Again, it's working with our community partners to negotiate that, to build that.
So through the deputy to Councillor Singh, it's one of the things that is very interesting with our seniors population is not necessarily that they're needing to step into, I think Gina captured quite well the perspective of individuals who are needing to step more into that like assisted living and the various care. But we're also seeing that a lot of our individuals, and the biggest challenge that seniors might be faced with, is that they're being priced out of their homes. As the value of homes in Cochrane are increasing drastically, their taxes are increasing. And that's where we have our tax rebate program for our seniors. So for our seniors who are seeing this, it's limited, but it is another one of those levers we're talking about of having seniors be able to stay in their home. Part of the age-friendly initiative and the plan associated with that too is really us having that holistic look at our seniors. So for some folks, it's not necessarily, oh, I need to be moving into that next level of care. It's, how do I stay in my home? How do I make my home more accessible? And if we look at this idea of we're seeing a senior population growing, it's not necessarily just about ensuring that we're building more units that are accessible, but sometimes it's working with developers to say, can we be focused on homes that have a bedroom on the main level? Can we be focused on homes that have this built in? Or can we be approaching some sort of grant or subsidy for people to, what are those, the chairs that move up the stairs, like an escalator in their home, like allowing people to retrofit their homes. Those are other tools that people have had, because our mandate in housing isn't just around pursuing affordable housing or subsidized housing and things like that. A lot of it is, how do you keep people in their homes? How do you help them age in place? How do you help them weather the rise in costs that might push them out of their home? And I think that's a big piece of that too. So for our seniors, it's that larger consideration. And that's why I think, it's so great to have something like our housing initiative and our housing strategist working with our team leading the age-friendly initiative.
So, and the question would be, what lessons can council take from 2020 report to ensure this assessment leads to a concrete outcome rather than another planning exercise?
Yeah, so one of the lessons I take away, so neither of us having been there, I think one of the biggest lessons and one that council took is investing in this role. I think that was one of the biggest things is, so we did the assessment, And then it kind of fell on one group to move it forward that was focused on the mandate they already had of running our affordable housing. So as we're seeing that Gina's role has been introduced, my role has been invested into, that's the ability for the town to work in partnership, allowing organizations like Rocky View Foundation or the Cochrane Society Housing Options to do what they do best, work with us in partnership to expand that and dive into our policies. I think the biggest issue that we had historically, not just in 2020, but in our previous iterations, was a lot of this work was off the side of someone's desk. It wasn't a dedicated role. And I think that's the clear difference that we have today, is this is a dedicated role of someone who is very well versed, very well educated, and has been focused on building that larger systems partnership. When it's a small percentage and just off the side of your desk, this is way too complex of something to do in that and do it well. And so I think that lesson was really what council heard and was part of the reason of the investment in this space. I think the biggest thing, if we're going to ask councils, will be the support on as we bring that forward to say, here are the various levers. We might have to make some tough decisions. What does investment look like? It'll be up to council to support us.
That was my next question. Are there any?
If I can, Councillor Singh, the only thing I would add is we have strategic planning coming, and the opportunity for council to be united and with a clear vision for this being a priority. Sure. I think that's going to be very important.
Thank
Sure.
you.
I'll leave it here then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
With no other questions, I do have some comments of my own. Councillor Singh did kind of touch on part of it was when was the previous needs assessment done? You answered that. The difference, Councillor McDonald definitely nailed it in that it feels like a big, large, fluffy piece, which is, you know, not being critical, but the one thing that I found that I struggle with is I find the data a little bit outdated. It feels like it's outdated when I read the entire report. There's a lot of reference back to 2021, and like we're 5 years out from that, right? So that information to me is just, I'm struggling to understand why it's so outdated and if it will be updated as it comes in for the final approval. I understand that, you know, even when you have 2024 numbers, you can't have exact 2025 because we just finished off the 2025 year. However, if you have a few months, I would like to see some updated, perhaps stats that maybe aren't totally written in stone in the report, but even an update to some of those things, because I did struggle with it when I read it. When it comes to some quick wins, I think it's super important. Both of you obviously were not here, but some of us on council have been discussing affordable housing for probably 3 years. And I remember at a particular meeting, we said, get it done. And we want to see it done in the next year. And 3 years later, still sitting here.
Yeah.
And it's like, get it done. Again, be another year, right? I think it's the frustration of many of us around the table that this hasn't moved really at all. Certainly not fast. And I understand that there are elements of costs and everything else associated with it. Some of the quick wins, I also wanted to state that when we're talking about senior housing or aging in place, I think the biggest thing is it's not necessarily always about affordable. It's that we don't even have the right housing product here. And I'm talking about like slab, 2-bedroom bungalows that become affordable, that, you know what, it doesn't, like nobody can live as a senior in a townhouse with 5 flights of stairs to get up to the top of to get up to your bedroom. Like, we need to start pushing, in my mind, and obviously I realize that a lot of our areas are already pre-planned for or have, you know, land use and stuff attached to them, but I think that we have to start thinking with developers outside the box that if you're going to come in here to build a new community, you have to allocate a certain amount of land where this can now be addressed through bylaws and then through the proper land use. But we're not getting anywhere. If we continue to build the same form of housing, we're going to have 100,000 people, and it's going to be the same that you see everywhere. And we need to really push back on that. For short-term wins, you did bring this up about perhaps like offsetting people to build secondary suites. So Okotoks has a great program where they have a grant opportunity where if you're a pre-owned home, you could apply for a certain amount of money if you wanted to build in a secondary legal suite. Or if you were a new build, you could get a different amount of money. I would also look at whether or not, I know that bylaws have all changed. I mean, I deal with that in my everyday job sometimes of dealing with, non-conforming suites versus legal suites. And maybe, I don't know if there's any opportunity to look at some of what we have currently in the bylaw, how much we're restricting to allow people to be legalized versus non-legalized, because it does factor in when you're dealing with people applying for mortgages. If you have a non-legalized suite, you can't use that income as part of a mortgage pre-approval. So it'd just be something maybe to take a look at to see if we can make some things easier. Same thing when I read about the backyard suites or garden suites or above garages. Is that an easy process to have done if you were choosing to build, say a suite above your garage? I don't know. I haven't obviously gone through it, but maybe relooking at those things to make sure that the process is easy if somebody chose to go that way. And lastly, I wanted to ask about, it did mention Habitat for Humanity. I know that we have 10 units here in town. Is there a chance for Habitat for Humanity to come in and build any more units? I don't know that information, but I'd be curious to find out if there's a possibility to look at that as well.
Okay, lots to unpack. Data, dates. This is a significant challenge, and I want to highlight a few reasons why we're using the 2021 data associated with that. So a housing needs assessment, generally you'll use the most up-to-date census data, which the most up-to-date census data that we have is 2021. For us to use more up-to-date data, we'd be waiting for the 2026 census to be complete, which wouldn't then be released until mid-2027. The issue and part of the reason that we wanted to do the housing needs assessment, we moved forward and council endorsed moving forward with the housing needs assessment, is having this completed is actually, in many spaces, a requirement for you to access grants. So if we're talking about major grants from CMHC or the province, they want to see that you have one that's completed and up to date. The previous assessment that we had was expiring. They generally only last for around 5 years. So we're kind of locked into this weird space of we have that data. Yes, it's beginning to come out of date already. We can supplement it with data that we would see from, municipal census. But this is also part of the reason that we were like, we need to do more of this in-depth community engagement with our partners who are have that lived experience, digging into what are their wait lists, what can that data, what can we extrapolate from that? But that hard census data, the preliminary analysis is really just done off of what do we have from Statistics Canada, what do we have from the province's data, and a lot of that, to be frank, as you've mentioned too, is several years behind. And rather than saying, well, we're going to wait till 2027, we're going to start working with that data. And I think if that is something that we want to do a supplemental update, part of the reason that we wanted to do this very in-depth one was that it would allow us to, once the data is out from the 2026 census, we can update those numbers rather than having to go back to a consultant and have it restart this process over and over again. So I agree, it's a challenge, but I think a bit of a trade-off for us to be able to access grants and to move forward in the space. Very much so agree with the challenges, and I think that Councillor Sin and what you had mentioned around that, not many things done. We knew where we were, we got this information, how do we move it forward? And I think, again, that's part of this investment into these roles is to make that happen. I do think you'll see, I know you will, you'll be seeing a lot more of us once we have that assessment and inside of the strategic planning, I think, to say, how do we action that? How do we make this happen with council support along the way? Love the quick wins discussion, feedback, thoughts. All of those are things that we're digging into and pulling on to say, yeah, these are the tools that we could use working with the developers or to change our different rules. You know, there are many ways that we could look at this, from whether it's something like land banking or incentivizing various ways to say, you know, what could we do with you as a developer when it comes to, you know, the various processes or expediting things, if you're going to build a certain amount of apartments or something like that. But a lot of that, you know, I think it's a cascading effect with how do we ensure that that works with planning's bylaws or what we're working with. Like, we can't be saying, here's this new rule when we're not working with the experts. So there are some challenges there. But again, I love the looking to other spaces, what Okotoks is doing, what Airdrie is doing, and that's where we've been doing a lot of the work right now while we're getting that data. Because once we know how many areas we're faced with, or the example you gave too about the right housing stock, that I think is really the crux of it in so many ways. Is it's not necessarily just affordable housing, like the cost associated. I want to be clear, we're in a big deficit there, not just for today, but 20, 30 years. But that's not just what we're working on. We're also going to have to work on how do we get the right stock. And I think that's just such a poignant thing to capture that we'll be bringing forward as well. Because it's not just about the lower half of the continuum. It's that whole spectrum along the way. Habitat for Humanity.
So with Habitat Humanity, we've been working with them to partner with them on building some additional housing. The challenge right now is that we've heard feedback from people who are looking to apply for homes that are available through Habitat for Humanity, and there isn't the uptake because it could be that we're still looking into this. It could be that the eligibility requirements are too stringent, whether there's not enough people who are aware of the program, promoting it. So we're also looking at whether there's policies that we can change internally to help with the promotion of their units that are available. So it's a matter of working with them to promote what's available, because that's an indicator for them. If there's numerous applications that come in for a unit, then that indicates to them that there is a demand for it. And thus far, based on the eligibility requirements of the individuals that are applying, they aren't quite finding the right fit. So we're continuing to explore having conversations with them to and develop a strategy to bring more of their units in for family home ownership. So we are exploring.
Awesome, you guys have answered like all my things, which is great. I'm excited to see what the engagement will bring up, because I mean, just around the table, when you start having these conversations, the ideas start to flow, or you come up with different ideas. So I'm sure that through your engagement that's coming up, that we're gonna hear a lot more interesting, innovative ideas, which I think will help maybe move this a little bit forward. And I don't say it critically, it's just that it's been on the horizon for so long. I think everybody around this table, the last thing we want to do is another assessment and no action plan, or have very little to almost nothing come out of it, right? Because it just feels like a big waste of dollars. So I'm excited to hear that that's not going to be the case as we move forward. So council, any other questions? Oh, Mr. Hyman?
Yeah, I'd just like to share with council just a few thoughts. I think Matt and Gina did an excellent job of sort of articulating their positions, and that it's not going to be off the corner of someone's desk, and their expertise in this field, I think, is really an important reflection. But also think about the decision that council made earlier this year about the grant position. You think about the federal government and where the money is going to be from the federal government related to housing, how important that is. You've got strategic planning coming as well, where you can make a firm commitment to this as one of your priorities to deliver on. We have the people. We're bringing other people in terms of grant and other opportunities. I think all the pieces are in play. And then just going back to the last discussion about the policing, one of the things you asked, Deputy Mayor, is check-ins. And I think that's something that's really important, is that we're checking in and providing updates where it just doesn't go months without an update. And I know Mr. Knox and certainly Gina will be happy to come and provide updates to council. So I think those things will lead to a different outcome than you've seen in the past.
Yeah, thank you. And that grants position is going to be absolutely key, because we do know that there's a lot out there. It's a fact that you have to have somebody dedicated to not only know where to look to find the grants, but what you need to be successful in achieving them. So thank you very much. I think we look forward to the updated information as it comes forward.
Thank you.
And with that, does council need a break at all, actually? Okay, we're good. Okay, we are going to continue on, it looks like. So item 5C is a capital projects 2025 update with Mr. Adam Sulo, Director of Engineering Services. Welcome to the podium.
Going to try and speak a little bit louder into the mic this time. So good evening, Madam Chair, members of council. Thank you for having me here this evening to talk about the capital project status update. So this is a 2025 program overview. So we're going to be talking about the projects that were commenced in the past that continued into the end of last year. So the intention of this presentation isn't to necessarily go through in detail in the report and rehash the report you received, but to provide some additional information and some context about capital projects, although I'm still happy to answer any questions about capital projects at the end of my presentation. The majority of our projects are on schedule and within approved budget, and I'm going to speak a little bit about the increasing delivery complexity we're currently actively managing. So on the screen is a current list of projects. As I said, these do not include the projects that were approved for commencement in 2026. The only thing I want to note for you that's both in the report and the presentation is James Walker Trail Stage 3. It's showing a December 2026 completion. It's actually going to be completed in the summer of next year, so we'll have vehicles on there. I don't have an exact date for you, but that's going to be in the summer of 2026. So some of the things I want to speak to you tonight, so the 4 key areas are resource capacity, the idea of active planning, the project complexity we're seeing, in stakeholder engagement. And I'm going to speak through each of those for you. So first I want to talk about resource capacity. So currently within our capital projects team, excluding me as a director of engineering, we have 3 individuals. We have a department manager, we have a capital project engineer, which is currently vacant. We're going to be replacing that, and another project manager. But this was a snapshot of the projects that they were managing, the budgetary numbers they were managing into the end of last year. In total, from a remaining active construction standpoint, we have over $80 million in active construction split up between the 3 project managers. I think what's important to note about this isn't necessarily the dollar figure, but the percentage of commitment. So we've approximated the percentage of their commitment to these projects. The numbers you see on the screen there reflect only on the actual projects. This does not include vacation time, this does not include sick time or other admin time. We probably have them operating somewhere in the area of 170 to 190% of their capacity. So I wanted to make sure that I pointed this out to you. Certainly the additional resources that were provided through budget and other measures we're taking will alleviate this pressure slightly, but we're in a scenario where you can honestly see that we should be doubling our resources based on the capacity that we're operating at, making it challenging to operate at this capacity safely. Continuing with this, the idea of workload and delivery capacity, so scale and complexity of our capital programs are exceeding historical norms. We have a number of projects that are requiring coordination across multiple projects as well as multiple stakeholders. We have, as I said, multiple large independent projects that are advancing concurrently, and a couple of the measures that we're taking, I should speak to this very quickly, is you may be aware that we've opened up, we call it a request for consulting services as a roster. So we've brought in a number of additional consultants. So we're using this to help us with the workload, as well as internal project management improvements that we're undertaking, a little bit better on the documentation side of things as well. Moving over to the idea of active planning, I think this was a topic of conversation during budget, and I wanted to elaborate at this. You know, at our current pace of growth, we need to more regularly undertake these planning projects, as we would call them, utility master plans, transportation master plans, and reviewing these items. I know there was a curiosity about the cadence at which we would do this. At our current growth rate, I would estimate that we would need to update these master plans every 5 years with an interim update somewhere in the middle of that at a 2 to 3 year period. But at the same time, you know, the demands on our systems need to be monitored annually. We need to understand what the impacts are on an annualized basis. You know, I would say, I would hazard to say I would make some comparisons for you. If it was half the growth rate, if we were 2% growth rate, you'd likely be looking at a cadence of every 10 years. Where I grew up in southwestern Ontario, we were in a community that was actually shrinking. So we updated every 30 to 40 years, as you can imagine, because your demands on your system aren't growing, they're actually shrinking, so you're trying to manage that shrinkage. So I just wanted I wanted to speak to the idea of that this active planning needs to be done. In addition, you know, we haven't undertaken, I've said this before, we haven't undertaken an evaluation of our stormwater in our established communities, or in how the interactions between the new communities and the established are occurring with respect to stormwater. It's important for us to understand the risks associated with this. Currently, and I think we've heard this before, we don't have a dedicated resource for this long-term planning. This is something that our capital projects, my engineering team is doing as well, and is I'll call it the day-to-day. And it obviously needs to be a priority for us. I spoke a little bit of the idea of project complexity. Many of our projects right now require agreements with external stakeholders. This includes landowners, such as individual landowners. And sometimes with developers as well, to reduce the risk of disruption to our infrastructure after. So we have a number of coordinating efforts we have to undertake with landowners to try and reduce future disruption. Many of our projects are now intertwining into the next. The water system is a good example of this. A number of our water projects that are in the planning stages right now, without getting into great detail and spending too much of my time explaining it, basically decisions on one impact the other and back and forth. So we require that decision making is more time consuming. And in addition, you know, our established communities, as you saw with the Glenpatrick project, are on the verge of requiring significant amounts of reconstruction, which brings obviously additional challenges with that in dealing with public concerns around construction and the disruption of construction in our established communities. And finally, I want to speak to stakeholder engagement. If you haven't had the chance to live in other places in either the province or in Canada, you may not realize just how engaged our residents are in the town of Cochrane. This comes with both positives and challenges that we have in the day-to-day. In addition, there's an extremely high expectation for not just the quality of the work, but in the manner of which it's delivered. Sometimes going what I would say is above industry standard currently, and this is something we need to continue to manage. Communication, not just broad-based communication on our website, but one-on-one communication with our internal staff is becoming critical, and it's important that we prepare our staff and our consultants to address these items as they come up. So with that, just wanted to touch on the upcoming council touch points. So the cadence that you're going to see me here talking about capital projects, my intention is, originally this was intended to be delivered in the fall. Obviously with the timeline we're on, this had to be adjusted. Typically you will see me here at least in the spring prior to construction to speak to the idea of what we're seeing in the upcoming year, and then a recap at the end of the year, much as we're talking about today. I think I've mentioned this before, but myself and Mr. Tooth, Director of Utilities, will be here in the first half of this year talking about long-term servicing strategy around water, including the utility master plan being brought forward to council. I want to say it's going to be in the winter, and then Mr. Kaczynski, myself will be coming forward with established areas redevelopment planning as well, and what that looks like from a utility lens and a long-term lens. And then the only other, I shouldn't say this, but the times you'll see me regarding capital projects or project-specific approvals or decisions that are requiring council input on. So with that, I will open it up to any questions that I'm happy. As I said, I'm happy to answer any questions about the capital projects individually if required.
Thank you for the presentation. Council, any questions around the table? Mayor Nagel?
I just want to say I really like this process of having the capital projects come back to a biannual update. We have the full list. For the next report, could we try and have just a bit more information on each of them, like maybe some relevant maps or photos if necessary? And then in terms of the on-budget piece, just a reminder of what the budget is and stuff like that. But generally, I really am happy to see this here this evening, and I have no specific questions about the projects. Thanks.
I do have a question for you. I too appreciate how this is going to come forward, just from the knowledge piece of keeping council up to date. When I read this, I had a couple of concerns in reading about the overload. That overload to me becomes a bigger issue, not just on taxing our current staff, but we've got a lot of big projects coming up, and when you're overloaded, mistakes can happen, costly mistakes. And so in your, and I don't maybe expect you to answer this tonight, but in your ideal world, if you could come forward and say, how much are we exactly short? Like, what are we short for staffing, complements? Because as we see, and I mean, City of Calgary is facing this right now, obviously there's infrastructure challenges. There's things that happen that aren't necessarily created from a worker perspective, but from the general public, when they're put out, they're looking back at the municipality or the city and wondering why this wasn't handled before. And I think this just becomes a big case of you're not staffed properly sometimes to begin with. So I don't know if you have that number now, but if it's something that you could come back with or something we just discuss at strategic planning. But I think we have to be very careful that we are taking on a lot. We all want things now, and we want that list to actually even grow because we have other demands that are going to go on that list. And I think realistically, you can't expect the same 10 people to do another 20 jobs successfully. I think we have to have some real conversation. If we're not going to invest, then the other part of that equation is what are you going to push back? What can you push back? I think it's a very valuable question that this council needs to have that discussion amongst ourselves, that you can't do it all. You can't have all the projects, limited staff, no tax increases, because we're going to run into a big problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To speak to that, I brought back up the slide that spoke to the idea of the commitment. I think you can get an understanding that we need to get this down closer to 80% per individual so that you can see how that would impact. And that's based on the current spend. Certainly, if the spend goes down, you could do that. If we wanted to move at the pace that we're currently at, you could easily 2.5 times the department size would be required to deliver on that. Now, I want you to keep in mind, it doesn't mean that we couldn't look to take on external resources. We have a number of large projects that are going to be coming up in the next 7 to 10 years. It might be something where we choose to have that managed entirely externally, which can also be reviewed as well. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a straightforward answer for everything, but if you want to move at the pace that we've been moving the last few years, that kind of gives you the perspective there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that just becomes a bigger conversation for this council to have, because you're right, either you're moving it out or you're increasing it internally, but we all have big wants, just some challenges on that one.
If I could just share as well, I appreciate Mr. Sulo and his time here and just the work that he's done. This isn't something that's solved just simply by doubling the staff tomorrow. It is a commitment. You've already dedicated some resources through this year, which we certainly appreciate. And certainly as we move forward, we'll be coming back with future requests, understanding where council's priorities are through our process. You can see I'm on a strategic planning theme here tonight, but that's certainly something that we're focused on and look forward to working with you guys. But I want to commend Mr. Sulo publicly for the work that he's done. We do have a vacancy in this area. We've continued to move forward. He does have a good plan in terms of the next steps. We're bringing some additional resources, but this won't be the last time that we're looking, especially with what the community needs moving forward.
And if I could please add to that, I neglected to mention this during budget, and I don't want to point this out. We're just talking about resources in my area. I think it's not appreciated the impact that we have on our procurement team. It takes a lot of that. Legislative services, we obviously have a lot of agreements we're dealing with day to day. Communications, operations. So we're talking about the ability for us to project manage. We're not necessarily talking about the impact that that's having on other departments as a result of doing more work as well. So it's hard for me to speak to that in great detail, but I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, fair enough. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Adam. I had 2 questions about traffic projects. The one was James Walker Trail you mentioned. It says we're going to take trucks off of the current haul route for the gravel operations in the spring, and then the actual James Walker Trail is completed after that in the summer. Is that what I heard? I'm also, when I'm looking at the map here, it looks like one half is town of Cochrane, one half is South Bow, but obviously those would be connected and all completed in the summer. Is that the anticipation right now?
Yep, through the chair. So the 2 lanes on James Walker Trail will be open. The other portion, the widening, is going to come later when it's required. There's ongoing conversation regarding the trucks on James Walker Trail from the gravel pit operation. We're having those conversations internally right now. That is related to the construction, so I don't have an immediate answer, but we're trying to work on that currently.
Okay, we're going to have some thrilled Riversong residents though that are not going to have flow through traffic or trucks on River Heights Drive come this summer.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. That's great news. On the other traffic project is I'm always interested to hear. I just had Center Avenue widening. Where does that fall on our capital project lists and timelines? I know it's somewhere in the great beyond in the future, but how far? are we looking at right now?
Hopefully it's going to be this year. We have an outstanding warranty item that we're addressing with the contractor right now. We're having some back and forth on. The final paving should be in the summer of this year, but we need to address this warranty item before we do the final surface lift on Center Ave.
Adam, I think Councillor Wilson is referring to the twinning across the tracks.
I am, but I'm also interested
Okay.
about the final paving of Center as well. So thank you for that.
Sorry, I might be mixed up here then.
Yeah, well, I guess he's looking for both, so certainly you've answered the first part, and then the second part, I believe, is 2027, when we're looking at twinning across the railway tracks, so.
Yeah,
That would be the beginning of the construction.
Correct.
Understood.
that would be the beginning of, sorry, apologies. That would be beginning of design in 2027.
Okay,
wouldn't be
thank you for
construction.
those specific updates. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor Nagel?
I actually have a James Walker Trail question. What's the speed limit going to be when it's done?
Oh,
Through the holiday cheer sessions, we had a conversation with our Protective Services Department about the need to increase the speed of driving through there. Of course, we can't increase the speed limit on River Heights because the houses front onto the collector. But I'm wondering if there's going to be a substantial speed limit increase on James Walker Trail. Is it?
through the chair, I'm going to have to get back to you. I can provide that in an update after. I don't have that information
Okay.
handy with me right now. Yeah.
Okay. Because one of the learnings is definitely speed limits are hard to change after they're set, either up or down. And so it'd be really, really important that we get the right speed limit.
Yeah, we'll confirm, I think it's significantly higher than the River Heights scenario, where
Okay.
we're experiencing some challenges.
Certainly higher than that, but we have I think through the chair, I think we have the ability to adjust speed limits. I think you might be speaking to the public feedback portion of that. Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand that for sure.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Suzo, Council? I guess you're off the hook for tonight. Thank you for your information.
Yeah, thank you.
So this does end the public portion of the meeting. We do have a closed session. We have 3 items in the closed session this evening. We have 2 items under exception 29(1)G of the Access to Information Act, advice from officials, and 1 item under the exception 29(1)D of the Access to Information Act, advice from officials on personnel. I just wanted it to be noted, due to the potential of a perceived conflict of interest as per section 172.1 of the Municipal Government Act, I personally will be recusing myself from item 6C during the closed session and will depart the meeting ahead of that item being discussed. Council, can I get a motion to go in camera? All in favor? We will cut the streaming and council will take a 10-minute break and we'll be back in.